We're going to get started again. Once again, my name is Ralph Green, and I'm the Vice President of Daddy's Right Here. Now, I would like to introduce the gentleman who had a vision and did a thesis project on the area of finding out about fathers. And through that process, he became very interested in finding out information about a crisis which created an urgent situation. I've had the pleasure of knowing this gentleman for a good 13 or 14 years. We were classmates in college, and now we have taken on the endeavor of trying to help men become better fathers, learn more information on how to be a father, in hopes that we can help some of the problems that are happening today in our society. With that, I would like to present the founder and CEO of Daddy's Right Here, Sabir Alim.
Let me have that. Good evening. Can y'all hear me? I really don't need a mic. I just kind of stand behind you because I really don't like to use a microphone. This has been a wonderful day, weather-wise, attendance-wise, because one of the things that I've come to realize, right, if one person shows up and I'm able to give that one person some information, that one person takes the information, goes to another person. That person goes on and on and on. It's a trickle-down theory. That means that each person gets touched by another person. So whether it's 500, whether it's 5,000, or whether it's 5 people, it really doesn't matter. Because as long as we continue to show up, that's what's important. There were a lot of speakers that came today. A lot of you missed these gentlemen that came. We talked about everything under the sun. And I don't want to rehash all they talked about because I just say you should have been here. But what it all comes down to is our whole mission and our whole vision is to begin to bring men forth. Every day you hear about more and more murders. You hear about the crack babies. You hear about the negativity of our youth. But you know what? One of the things we don't address? We don't address our own attitudes. We don't address our own. We have conflict not just with religion, not just with color, not just with light skin and dark skin. We have conflict if I refer to myself as a black man and you call yourself African American. Things just that simple that we don't look at every day that divide us constantly. Constantly. It's easy to point your finger and look at somebody else. I don't know, how many of you saw Scarface? And you remember the scene in the restaurant where him and his girlfriend, his wife, had a conflict in the restaurant, and he was sitting back slouched in his chair, and then he finally got up, and he turned around and he said to the people, "Go ahead, look at me. Take a good look at the bad guy." And what he said was, you need people like me. So you can point your finger and say, there goes the bad guy. Earlier today, we were talking about conflict theory. And we were talking about Adam and Eve. We talk about how that the dissension between men and women started with the apple, the tree, and all that other stuff that we were talking about, by looking at different thought processes from Christianity to Islam. We were looking at how it started way back when. And then we kind of moved on up a little bit, and when we look at 1865, which is June 13th, which we call Juneteenth, where slaves thought they were being freed, right? They thought they were being freed, right? But one of the things they come to find out that if you lived in North Philly, you couldn't go to work in South Philly without a judge's order. You couldn't go and work in white-collar businesses. You had to be a laborer. And if you look at today, you still need a judge's order, which they call a diploma, which they call a degree, in order for you to work in other places. So earlier today, we were talking about lack of education. Do you realize that 7 out of every 10 blacks who are attending college right now, 7 of them are women? 7 of them are women. when you walk around the campuses of any university, whether it's a historically black college or university, whether it's one historically white, you walk around and you look and you see all the women who are going to school, getting educated. When you see all the marches that take place in the city of Philadelphia and other cities, when you look all the way down there to Gina, Louisiana, you look all the way down there, right? What you mostly saw here were women. What you saw many of down there, and this is historical, were men. And it wasn't a man's march. It wasn't a man's march. But what's happening is men are beginning to listen and answer to the call. Because one of the things that we have to realize is that from birth, men, the male is ordained to take responsibility and protect his family. But we seem to have some confusion as to what it means by protect. And it's not necessarily talking about a 9mm or 12-gauge shotgun. So you learn to protect your family intellectually. You learn to protect your family emotionally, spiritually. That's how you learn to protect your family. Because, see, every situation doesn't have to end in what? Who you talking to? Just the other day, we were outside. There were some kids on the block, and they're on the block every day, up and down the block, throwing stones and throwing footballs, and they're just destroying our property. They don't even live on the block. But you don't see any of their parents around. The street is abandoned. No parents. Nobody's sitting outside supervising their children. But what do you think the first thing is going to happen when you go grab little Johnny or little Mike or little Mary by their collar and go to take them to their front door? The first thing that's going to happen is the parents are going to confront you about putting your hand on their child. But day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year, there are confrontations that end in somebody getting killed. Simply because they said something to somebody's child or they said something to you about a behavior. It happens every day. I don't know how many of you know about law, but let me take you to something for a minute. We talk about the Gina 6, and I'm going to talk about it tonight. Because one of the things that we have to realize is the system and how the system works. Now, we have these young men who are put on trial and had these charges levied against them. Now, win or lose, right, what we're faced with now is what? This is how laws goes. When incidents happen and people go to court and they get charges, it becomes a historical case. Now, when Ralph goes out and he decides that he wants to go sit under that same tree that the all whites were sitting under, right? The same thing is going to happen right here in Philadelphia. It's the same thing. What people don't understand about law is this. Once a case goes to trial, win or lose, it is now something that one can use as a defense or a prosecution. We don't pay attention to those things. I'm going to take you back again to 1865, where what they put in place was called the Black Codes. And the Black Codes were frivolous laws that were put in place, such as you couldn't look at a white person the wrong way without being arrested, locked up. Because, see, what happened was the plantation owners realized that the free labor was gone. So they had to find a way to get blacks back on the plantation, but they found a way to do it through the prison system. Do you know how many laws are on the books today that something as simple as changing your oil in front of your house, you can't do that? And many people don't know that. You can be cited for that. You can be cited for changing oil in your car in front of your door. You know why? Because that really ain't your door. You can't do what you want in your house. Not for real. You have to look at how we perceive things. Earlier today, a gentleman walked into here and he stood there in the back room, and I watched him from over here. He just stood there, and he stood there with this snarl on his face and just looked around at everybody like, why are y'all here? Now, he's from the neighborhood. I sat there for about 5 minutes and watched him. And then I got up and I walked back there to him. And I went to him and said, how you doing? And he just turned around and looked at me. I said, my name is Sabir Alim. I'm the founder and CEO of this organization who's putting on this event. And he said, okay. I said, it's a menu behind you if you want to order some food, because this is also a fundraiser. He said, yeah, all right. Most of the confrontations that I have had have not been with teens, have not been with preteens. They have been with men my age. Men my age. So I'm not fully in agreement with this crack baby syndrome that we keep talking about. Because for me, I'm over 40 years old. I'm responsible for what goes on right in that street right now. I'm responsible. I set that trend. I used drugs. I sold drugs. I wreaked havoc in my community. I set the tone. But a lot of us don't want to take that responsibility and say, yeah, well, if I live that lifestyle, I'm responsible for it. I'm responsible for it. So that means I'm responsible for providing the solution. I'm responsible for the solution. One of the things we have to look at is, again, I'm going to talk about some of the conflicts that we have amongst ourselves. When I look around this room and I see the few that showed up, I emailed, telephoned, text messaged, carrier pigeoned, everything to communicate with everybody in this city and out of this city. Some people came from Baltimore just to show up, say, hey, we show up, we support your cause. AVRP, Department of Behavioral Health, Mental Retardation, CBH, DHS had no problem whatsoever showing up. I got phone calls to remind me that y'all were going to be here. But when you look around this room, we see the same people over and over and over and over again addressing the issues. The same people. The same people. But it's one thing to sit down and tell somebody what they shouldn't do, but what example do you set? You can't gain anything through arrogance and self-righteousness. Nothing. There's such an arrogance that our communities reek of today that keeps us, that hinders us from moving forward. The community should have been here in masses. I spent from 1981 to date in this community. In this community. If you walk out of here right now, do you know how many men you will see standing on the corner just slinging dope or standing there doing absolutely nothing? But then the question comes down to why. See, the theme this year is back on the block. And there's two pieces to that. One of the pieces is this. When our men come home from prison, and this is something that many of you probably don't know. Fathers, when fathers come home from prison, right? They come into halfway houses. They come into community corrections facilities, right? They have to get a job, which is fine. I want to get a job. When I come home, I want to start making things happen. But what happens is this. They have to go to cost and fines. They have to go to traffic court. They have to go to family court. They have to find a home plan, and many of them don't have home plans. Therefore, they have to establish a savings plan so they can get a home plan, right? Plus, they have to pay arrearages on support. Plus, they have to stay current. Now, somebody would say, well, it's their child, it's their responsibility, they're supposed to. Absolutely. Absolutely. But how many of you have been down to family court? How many men have been down to family court and gotten help? And if I ask how many women, as soon as a woman walks into there, she gets all the information she needs. It's been my own personal experience, so I'm not making it up. I've gone in there, nobody told me about, this service and that service. They pretty much thought I was actually there because I was in the rear. But one of the things that's happening is men are not getting educated on the services that are available to them to help them. There's currently elements in place to assist men, that you can stop the accrual of their rearages while incarcerated. And when you come out, begin your repayment from there. How many fathers we have in here? How many of you fathers are in that situation whereas you've had to go down to family court? That's part of the process, right? When you come out of Coleman, when you come into community corrections facilities. I work in one, so I know the process too. And the reality of it is, when you go before the judge and the judge says, I want $1,500 in 2 weeks, or I'm going to lock you back up, does he ask you, are you able to get it? Does he ask you, how are you going to get it? No. You know what he tells you? In 2 weeks, I expect to see you with $1,500, or I'm going to lock you up. Now, I just came from upstate. I've been in this facility for 30 days. I just started working. Where, Your Honor, with all due respect, am I going to get $1,500? And what is his response? Don't matter. I'll see you in 2 weeks. Now, I'm telling you that when you come home, I want you to stay on that path. Right? I want you to stay out of trouble. I want you to stay away from these people. I want you to stay away from these elements. I want you to get your life together. I want you to be with your family. How am I going to do that? If you keep locking me up because I can't keep coming up with this money. I had a guy who was in one of our treatment programs who went to see the judge every couple of weeks with money. His employer went up there with him. And his employer said to him, listen, Your Honor, I come up here with him and I give him money and I give him advance pay so he can keep paying you. He said, I'm tired. He said, what's the sense of him working? He can't do anything. I'm coming up here advancing you his pay every couple of weeks, so how is he going to do anything? You know what he did? He went back to selling drugs. He went back to doing whatever he could do to make those payments, just because he wanted to be with his family, just because he wanted to try to be responsible. So we keep putting this label, deadbeat dads, on a lot of fathers. On a lot of fathers. But a lot of these fathers aren't deadbeat. They're beat dead. Because they're taking responsibility constantly. Many of them. I see them. I've counseled them. And they get tired. They get tired. They get tired of going back and forth and can't even do anything for themselves. How do they get back on their feet? How do they get their lives back together? How do they become productive members of society when all their money is coming out of their pockets going to everything else? And it's not an excuse, it's a reality. From the point of slavery, black men have become acclimated to not being a part of their family. We have to look at the conditioning. We have to look at the conditioning. They were put with women to have children. As soon as the child was had, what would happen? They separate the family. They take the child, carry the child off to Master Joe's place down there to raise the child up there. That became with the mandingo on that plantation. Then they slept with somebody else. It was a matter of just procreation. And move on and move on and move on. Like Stanley said earlier, 400 years, you think that's going to go away? How many asked the question, why are men so angry? Why? One of the things that Daddy's Right Here focuses on is addressing the emotions, the untapped emotions. We have a parenting program. We have a program on right conduct. And one of the things that we focus, we hammer away on is you. What is it about you? Why are you so angry? Because I can tell you why I've been angry. But it's not about me. It's about you. Do you really think that you can make the transition from standing on the corner, clocking, breaking night from Thursday to Sunday, and go in and really respect your family? You have become acclimated, you have become conditioned to control your environment. And I really don't think that we look at these kind of things. I really think that we still sit around and say, well, they know what they're doing, they shouldn't be doing this, and they shouldn't be doing that, they know better. Yeah, maybe they do. Maybe they do. But I know from up until 1994, I'll say, I wreaked havoc on everybody that was around me. My children, my wife, the community, Miss Mary, who sat in the window all the time, who knew everything, Mr. Bill down the street, who tried his best to help me, tell me to stay away from Lil Snot and Lil Frank. All those people, I didn't care about them. I didn't respect them. I had no respect for them whatsoever. Every day when we walk out of here and we look at these young brothers on the street with the clothes hanging off of them and the whole attitude that is pretty much reflective of what you see in the video, because I wasn't raised that way. If my pants hung off my behind, trust me, I had a belt either around my waist or around my behind. But the disrespect that is shown amongst us as individuals needs to stop. How many people, how many brothers stop next to another brother at a stoplight or at a stop sign and look over to that brother and say, "What's up, bro? How you doing?" How many of you come out of your houses and say good morning? We don't even have people to come and say good morning. People literally growl at you when you say good morning to them. I was in the supermarket a few weeks ago, and I said to the cashier, I was putting my things up. I said, "Hi, how you doing?" Putting my stuff up, and she never responded. So when I got finished putting my stuff up, I stepped a little further up to you and said, "Hi, how are you?" And she said, "Oh, hi, I'm sorry. I thought you were talking to somebody else." She said, "I'm so used to just saying thank you, have a nice day, and nobody's saying anything to me that I just automatically assumed you weren't talking to me." She automatically assumed that I was not talking to her. Now, there's something wrong with that. And what I said to her was, I said, what happens is you have a lot of people who come in here and spend their money and think they need to get the royal treatment. But what's wrong with being cordial? What's wrong with being respectful? What's wrong with it? Why is it we have to walk around here and act like we're so angry with one another? We don't like people for the stupidest reasons. Dorothy Johnson Spite, who is the president, CEO, executive director of Mothers in Charge, when I listened to her and her story and what she told, I mean, I didn't want to do anything but get involved with them. Because one of the things that we have to look at is, when does it stop? Last year this time, September the 23rd, actually, to be exact, we had our first symposium. And at that time, there were 236 murders in the city of Philadelphia. We have how many now? 300? 306. And do you know how many of these are unresolved? And do you know why they're unresolved? Because our communities have embraced a value system of the criminal element. Nobody wants to snitch. Nobody wants to say anything. People turn their stereos up, turn the TVs up, so they can avoid the reality of their community. It happens every day. It happens every day. We become prisoners in our own homes. We need to stop. Because that crap game that's taking place on a corner up the street from your house, we all know what it brings. And when people say, well, as long as they ain't doing it in front of my door, ain't no thing. But what do you do when it comes to your door? Then you come out and you compromise your own freedom because you want to address the issue now. But you should have addressed it when it was on the corner. Those little children I was talking about earlier who were on the block throwing rocks and doing all kinds of things to destroy our property, I went outside to talk to him. Now, while I'm coming outside to talk to him, my neighbor comes out with a bullhorn. He takes their ball that they're out there playing with and tells them, I'm keeping the ball. Now go tell your parents to come see me. I didn't think that was necessary. I called the little boy over that my wife had identified who was throwing the rocks at the house. And I told him, I said, come here for a minute. And I said, well, you were throwing rocks at the house? He said, no, I was throwing them down. I said, okay, let's look at it this way. If you were throwing them down, up, across, anywhere, you should have been throwing rocks. But my neighbor had a different perspective. He's still on the bullhorn. Badass kids, yah, yah, yah. He's yelling and screaming at these kids. And I'm like, well, first of all, now you're setting yourself up to be disrespected. Because you don't need to be cursing at anybody's kids. All you have to do is go over there and talk to him the way I was talking to him without the bullhorn, and we can resolve the issue. But it didn't happen that way. But the thing of it is even though his approach was wrong, if the parents of any of those children would have come, I would have stood by his side and supported him. Because if my windshield gets broken, my windshield costs about $500. If I go to your house and tell you that your child just broke my windshield, first thing you're going to say to me is what? Did you see him do it? How do you know it wasn't little Johnny? They were all out there throwing the ball, weren't they? Did you see him do it? So what I'm saying is, just like the crap game on the corner, when we see these kind of behaviors happening, we need to do something about it. There's no way in the world that 13 children should be playing up and down the block that they don't even live on, and nobody does anything about it. Because people are afraid to say something to somebody's parent. But these are the kind of attitudes that we deal with every day, the conflicts amongst ourselves, because like Brian had said earlier, right, we no longer live in neighborhoods, we live in hoods. We live in hoods. Because there's nothing neighborly going on in our communities. We put flyers in all the doors around here. We posted posters. We sent out PSAs. We did all kinds of things, you know, to bring to the community's attention that father absenteeism is an issue. It's an issue that we need to address. It's an issue we need to address. I really like to to give recognition to the brothers who came here today for community service. I thank you. I thank you, because what happened was, and see, this is part of the system where some just buy into the system. I had one brother come up to me today and he said, "Listen, my man ain't make it. He got caught up. Can you sign his joint?" You got to be real careful, first of all, who you talk to. That's the first thing. And I turned around, I looked at him, I said, "Brother, I don't roll like that. If he didn't come, he didn't come. And why would you want me to sign his when you came and participated?" And he didn't. You want to compromise my ethics and my values. You're compromising yours because everybody didn't come at the same time and try to advocate for the homie. You came, so they slid you in the door and asked you to do it, and all you had to say was, "No, I'm not riding like that." But how many of us have done things to be a part of? How many of us have done it? At any given time. How many of us have done things just to get along? If you like chocolate ice cream, so did I when I was young, because I wanted to be your friend. If you like Camaros, so did I. Even if I liked the Corvette, I wanted to be a part of. What I want to be a part of is something positive. Everybody who came here tonight obviously wants to be a part of something positive. Because on a Saturday evening, you can be doing anything else. Anything else. Today is my birthday. I could be doing anything else. But I'm here because it's important. It's important that I continue to show up, no matter how many people show up and how many people don't show up. No matter what. I'd like to invite the males in here to grab one of our brochures over there on the table. Beginning next month, we'll be having men's groups. We're trying to nail down the day. It'll be at the Triumph Tuesday, on Tuesdays at Triumph Baptist, 16th and Winklehocking, right? And we'll be having men's groups there. We'll be having guest speakers come in. It costs you absolutely nothing. It costs you absolutely nothing. So for those of you who have problems with 12-step fellowships, and those of you who have problems with attending venues that seem to have you under a microscope, you need to come join us. When we talk about doing community service, we talk about going to areas that are heavily populated with seniors and shoveling their pavements, cleaning their block, assisting them with some of the things that they need to have done outside of their homes. We have to understand people have different places too. I've done the march thing. You know, at some point, you know, the marches are great. That's not for everybody all the time. It's not for everybody all the time. We all have our roles, and what it is, we need to find what our role is. We need to find what our role is. And I think we have yet to do that. I think there's still a long way to go to determine what our role is in being involved in our communities. How many brothers in here are attending the 10,000 or more march October the 21st? That's happening down the Leocoris, Kenny? It's happening down to Leocoris? For those of you brothers who don't know, get the information. It's time for us to take a stand. It's time for us to make safer communities for our children. It's time for us to make safer communities for our wives, our grandmothers, our mothers. September the 14th of 2004, my father was murdered. Did absolutely nothing to anybody. He was stabbed to death by somebody he was helping. Somebody he was helping. Somebody who didn't have a place to live. Somebody who didn't have a means to make money. He was helping that person. And the brother killed him because he wanted one more. All about getting one more. Another drink, another hit, another snort, whatever it was, he wanted one more. My father, who it took at least 30 years of my life for me to get back to him. And after I get back to him, but I'm thankful for the time that we did have together. I'm thankful for the time that I did invest in working through my anger and my resentments and everything so I could start establishing a relationship with my father. It's important that we're allowed as fathers to participate in the lives of our children. Your failed relationship is just that, a failed relationship. If it's over, it's over. Leave her alone, leave him alone. You are still mom, you are still dad. The problem that we're having is that we don't know how to leave well enough alone, and we want to keep harassing one another, keep browbeating one another, keep talking negative about one another to the child. The child grows up to hate somebody, and usually it's the one that the child lives with that is held responsible, because many times the child either holds themselves responsible for the parting of the relationship, or they hold the custodial parent responsible. We have to start taking a look at how we're talking to our children. We have to start taking a look at how we talk to the mothers of our children. Mothers need to start taking responsibility and taking a look at how they talk to the fathers. If he was slinging dope when you met him, you think because you got pregnant, all of a sudden he's supposed to be responsible? You would think. But we're talking about conditioning. We're talking about psychological, psychiatric issues. We talk about mental health. We talk about trauma. If you've never been incarcerated, or if you've never been in situations that are traumatizing, such as, do you know active addiction is traumatizing? Anybody ever been addicted to drugs, alcohol? Do you know how traumatizing that is? Do you know how long it takes some people to come back from that? Do you know some don't come back because they are not able to do the work to face their reality? There's a whole lot involved in all this, instead of just telling somebody you need to be responsible. It's more to it than that. What's the cliche? It's best to understand than to be understood. When two people are trying to discuss issues and one is bringing out a laundry list of issues, nothing gets resolved. When you talk about what presents itself and resolve that, you can continue to move forward. But what happens is you often get reminded of what you ain't been doing. You've been going for 5 years. How you going to come in here and start telling us how to do this? And then the attitude becomes, well, because I'm mom, I'm dad, I can't. One of the things we have to learn is that when we're away, when we come back in, we need to fall in line. And we need to find what our role is. We need to find what our role is, because the household has been running the way that person has been running it since you've been gone. So there's a system in place. So you need to find what your place is in that system. I have 2 of my daughters here today. I have 2 of my granddaughters here today. I have another daughter and another granddaughter. I have 3 daughters and 3 granddaughters. I don't know how they set that one up. And they all had their children, I'm going to put y'all on blast, weeks apart. I think it was a conspiracy. I don't know what y'all say, but I say all that to say that I have one child who is still at odds with me because of the things that I've done and failed to do. And I continue to struggle with that relationship. And there's some of us in here who continues to struggle with some of the relationships with their children. But ask yourself something. Look around this room and see how few of these chairs are filled. If I had made a decision that there wasn't enough people in this room, that we might as well close shop, what benefit would that be to anybody? One of the things I always tell guys who have a problem coming out of institution, and not just guys, and women too who coming out of institutions, is that 0 is always 0. How can you complain about they only paying me the minimum wage when you didn't help with any electric bill this month? You didn't help with any phone bill this month. You have to start from somewhere. Yeah, it's a struggle. Brian talked about his journey in education, and I waited to the very last minute to go back to school. Achieved an associate's degree. How old was I? About 34. I decided I was going back to school, and I got a GED. By the time I got my GED, I had already made plans to go get an associate's degree. By the time I had got done that course with associate's degree, I was already enrolled at Lincoln University for a master's degree. Again, everything ain't for everybody. Education is my thing. It ain't got to be yours. So I'm not hammering pursuing degrees. What I am hammering is do something that's going to elevate you where you are, or beyond where you are, or beyond where you are. Because not only am I a CEO and founder of this organization, I'm a program director for another organization. And I worked to get there. One of the things Robert Hall, a good friend of mine, told me, he always said, Sabir, stay the course. Just stay the course. Because what's going to happen for this organization is going to happen. What's going to happen for you is going to happen. But what's so important about relationships is if you don't encircle yourself with people who are positive, who are trying to do something real in their lives, just a matter of time, man, before they're going to bring you down. See, the devil doesn't travel on the path of those he's already gotten. He already got them. He ain't got to be over there. He got y'all. He's on this path over here. The path that those who are trying to live right are on. Because he wants to see how he can get you. Keep whispering in your ear, telling you ain't nothing. You ain't never been nothing. And for some of us, that's echoing from our childhood, from our parents. And it still resonates in our minds sometimes when we face with dilemmas where we're feeling like we're not achieving. It's really important that we begin to look at ourselves.